the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Erickson, will you take roll?
Mayor LaKind,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem King,
Here.
Councilmember Romanella,
Here.
Councilmember Abbott,
Here.
Councilmember Kimple.
Here.
Councilmember Chronic,
Here.
Councilmember Fiorito.
Here.
Okay, first up, disclosures of conflicts of interest. Are there any council members or staff that have a conflict of interest tonight? No, okay. And before us, we have an agenda and a consent agenda. Are there any modifications to the agenda? Okay, I have one. We are going to strike 4A due to Chief Reagan being out ill. And he is not up to being online to present. He was in Texas, it had nothing to do with me. You know how Texas can do those things to people.
Oh, man, that was a, oh,
Yeah,
that
must
one
be.
got me. That one got me.
Any other modifications to the agenda? Okay, then I'll look for a motion.
I move to approve the agenda as modified.
Second?
We have a motion and a second.
Mayor Pro Tem King,
Yes.
Councilmember Kimple,
Yes.
Mayor LaKind,
Yes?
Councilmember Fiorito,
Yes.
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Chronic,
Yes.
Councilmember Romanella.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Mayor, in talking with Chief Regan, he would like to continue that till the next meeting. So we'll be able to make that presentation at the next meeting.
Okay. Now I think we need a motion for the consent agenda, do we not? Oh, that was just the modified agenda.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Oh, he's done that.
Yeah, okay. All right, then we have some presentations tonight. I'm sure that's why everybody is here. Welcome. First up, we are going to review the Northern Delivery System. Mr. McGrady, if you would like to take the mic. Sure, it's working. It's always on.
It's always on.
That one's always on.
That's easy. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim McGrady. I'm the district manager with Triview Metropolitan District. I'm here to talk a little bit about the Northern Delivery System, give you a status update, and also discuss a little bit of the way Triview has envisioned a possible participation with Triview in this project. So, so what we're going to talk about, Chris Cummins is our water attorney. He's right there. Chris can answer any legal questions that you may have. I'll stick to the operations and the engineering of this project. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about who is Triview, what we are. We'll talk a little bit about our renewable water and project purpose, contracts, permits, water rights, etc. that we've obtained. We'll talk a little bit about future operations and the importance of sustainability. I want to talk a little bit also about our Stonewall Springs Reservoir Complex, both our existing South Reservoir as well as our Central Reservoir that's planned and permitted and ready to start construction on. Then give you an update on the Northern Delivery System and opportunities for Monument to participate in our project. So Triview is a Title 32 special district. If you look at the map up here, the yellow boundary is in fact Triview. We're about 2,590 acres, 63.6% of the overall town of Monument. So a sizable portion of the population resides within Triview, probably upwards of 8,500 people. There's currently about 2,155 single-family homes, 80 commercial projects, and 53 irrigation customers. At full build out, we expect to have about 3,226 single-family homes, so about another 1,000 to go. Most of those lots are already platted, so we can see the end in sight as far as development within Monument. The Triview service area, importantly, is located within the Arkansas Valley. So our current water supply, we have about 2.7 million gallons of water supply. We have 5 Denver Basin wells and 5 Arapahoe wells located within the Denver aquifer, and we have 4 Denver aquifer wells. So we have a grand total of 9 wells, each capable of producing between 300 GPMs, gallons per minute, for the Arapahoe and 90 gallons per minute for the Denver Basin wells. So our total delivered capacity right now as we speak from our wells is about 2.7 million. Now what Triview has done is we recognize that in time, the production level in these wells is going to decline. So we thought that while the wells are still producing at a fairly high rate, we should move away from them and try to make them more supplemental and move to a renewable water supply. And this map up here shows kind of the extent of our water collection system as it exists today. We have water rights in the upper Arkansas Basin up near Buena Vista. We have water rights near Salida. We also have water rights below Pueblo down in the Arkansas Valley. And we also have very senior water rights on the Monument or on Fountain Creek, located just south of Colorado Springs. It's called the Fountain Mutual Irrigation Company. So we bought shares, and in fact, in the Bale Ditch and the Arkansas Valley Irrigation Company, we own 100% of those 2 companies. Excelsior were the second largest shareholder. There's only 3 shareholders in Excelsior. We're the second largest. Agrit owns about 52%. We own about 42%. And the remaining 6% or so is owned by a private individual. FMIC, we're the majority shareholder in FMIC. So we've gone out and we've bought 1,057 shares. The interesting part about FMIC is it also has storage associated with it, which is about 900 acre feet. So you have about 900 acre feet of storage along that's very senior storage, and it's a water right that comes into priority every single winter. So we're able to store in that FMIC reservoir called Big Johnson Reservoir. We're able to store every single winter. So one of the things that we've embarked over the last 6 years really is we've tried to go out and we've tried to get our permitting. And the very first permit that we got was for what we called an excess capacity contract in Pueblo Reservoir. That was 999 acre feet of storage space. And it can be used, you can fill it, empty it, fill it, and empty it. It's not like a typical storage vessel where there's a defined storage amount. You can use this storage space over and over and over again in the course of the year. Interestingly, it also is the beginning point of the Colorado Springs Utilities Southern Delivery System. So without having the space, you don't have access to the Southern Delivery System. We were able to get this contract with access to what's known as the North Outlet Works. The North Outlet Works is where the Southern Delivery System is actually connected to. So that became kind of our starting point for this delivery system that we're in the process of building. We also obtained in 2022 a Pueblo County 1041 permit, and in July of 2023 we obtained a second 1041 permit. I'm not going to bore you with the details as to why there were 2 of them, but there was. And one had to do with Pueblo Reservoir operations and above. The other permit had to do with everything below Pueblo Reservoir and including our exchanges, the construction of the central reservoir and the construction of the south reservoir. We're going to talk about in a bit. In April of 2023, we signed a convey, treat, and deliver contract with Colorado Springs Utilities. That allows them to wheel the water from Pueblo Reservoir into their distribution system. And it also allows us to move water from their distribution system into the Triview district's distribution system. So that was once again, a very, very key component of this whole thing. I failed to mention that El Paso County 1041 permit, we also had to get one of those because our pipeline was basically going to go through El Paso County. And therefore, El Paso County had to give us the permission to go through there. As far as water rights go, the water rights that we own, we have a total average annual yield of about 1,934 acre feet. We also have, if we use and reuse our reusable return flows to extinction, I'm sure you've heard that term before, that gives us another 1,000 acre feet. So all total, we have about 2,900 acre feet of water that we can use right now to supply Triview, not only now, but in the future. As I mentioned, storage is an extremely important component of this. In Colorado, water runs basically from about May to July. So you got May, June, July, 3 months. That's when your water runs, and it all comes at one time. And if you don't have storage to capture it, what are you going to do? It goes away. You need to have that ability to capture it. So we saw the importance of storage. So we built and constructed the Stonewall Springs Reservoir Complex. The first reservoir in that complex is the South Reservoir, which is 1,850 acre feet. That reservoir is in the process. It happens to be full right now as we speak. Thank God we had a wet year and we were able to capture that. A lot of that water that we had, we were in priority for well over a month. And we were able to put that water into that storage vessel. We're in the process right now of pumping it out. Our agricultural partner in that project, or basically leased our space this year. They're in the process of evacuating some of that storage space, and they're pumping water out as we speak at 25 CFS into the Arkansas River and taking that water down to John Martin. That's something they're doing, but it demonstrates the fact that this reservoir is in an ideal location directly below Fountain Creek and the confluence with the Arkansas. It has the ability to put a lot of water into it, 60 CFS, somewhere in that vicinity into this reservoir. So we can fill that reservoir in a matter of a couple, 3 weeks. The other thing that it does is it has a 30 CFS pump that pumps water out. So you can operate this with exchanges. And last but not least, we have Pueblo Reservoir at 999, and the Big Johnson Reservoir, our share of capacity is about 930 acre feet. So sum total about almost 3,800 acre feet of storage. That's roughly a year and a half of storage. If you look at our max year demand, we have about a year and a half of that in storage. So in addition, we have the ability to continue to pump our wells, which, in the form of a drought, there's a drought. We have 2,000 acre feet of Denver Basin wells that we can pump and offset some of that. So if a severe drought hits, we have 2,000 acre feet to fall back on in our Denver Basin wells because we're in the process of conserving that water. If you don't conserve that water and that aquifer continues to drop, pretty soon you find yourself in a position where you don't have access to that water. So we felt there was some urgency to get that this project completed and save those wells while we could. Last but not least, we're looking at a contract lease with the Pueblo Board of Water. It's kind of a tricky thing when we built the northern delivery system so quickly, and it's going to be online, like I say, in July. I'm a little concerned that we get the northern delivery system built. All of our water rights that are going through the water court process may not sync up perfectly with the completion of the northern delivery system. So we're looking at a 25 or up to a 25-year lease with Pueblo in order to, they've got loads of water down there. We can actually lease water from Pueblo Board of Water with up to a 25-year lease. We're looking at doing that. I don't think we'll do anything close to 25 years unless you guys want to come on board with us, then maybe we would. But clearly that 25-year lease is something of real value. And the cost to lease that water currently is about $800 an acre foot. So just a little over $2 a thousand. So this is kind of a, oops. There we go. So this is a map of our delivery system. It's a little bit cartoonish, but I like it because it's simple. And what this does is it shows that up in the upper corner, there's a pink box up there near the town of Buena Vista. The concept behind this water system is we take water off of this giant hayfield. It's about a 300-acre hayfield. And we take the water that used to irrigate the hay and it goes back down Cottonwood Creek, and then it flows down to Pueblo Reservoir. The bale ditch is smaller, but it does the same thing. It yields about 100 acre feet. And that water flows down the Arkansas directly into Pueblo Reservoir into our 999 acre foot vessel. Now we have the Excelsior water, which is plus or minus 568 acre feet. That water flows into Stonewall Springs. And we can either bring the water back out of the, what we call an AUG station, or we can take it into storage and then deliver it back to the river and exchange it back into Pueblo. So there's how we get the third tranche of our water, by exchange back into Pueblo. Keep in mind, that was the second part of our 1041 that we just got done. We also have the FMIC water rights that are located just the southern end of Colorado Springs, near actually near where Highway 24 bypass crosses over, turns off of I-25 and crosses over Fountain Creek. That's about where the FMIC head gate is. We can put water, divert it there, put it back in the Fountain Creek, and we can take it back down to Pueblo and exchange it into Pueblo Reservoir. If there's not exchange potential, we can run it down and collect it at the Stonewall Springs complex. We can do the same thing with our wastewater return flows. We can divert those through our system, dump them into Monument Creek. They flow down Monument Creek all the way to the Arkansas. If there's exchange potential to move them up into Pueblo Reservoir, we'll do that. If there's not, we run it down to Stonewall Springs and capture it there and wait for the exchange potential to develop. Once the water's in Pueblo, it's pumped through the Southern Delivery System, through the Bailey plant, into Colorado Springs Utilities distribution system. And from the distribution system, their distribution system, we take our water out. It's what's known as the Highway 83 tank, located at Highway 83 and Old Northgate Road. And that's where that's located. So essentially, that's how the whole system is put together. And we'll kind of go on and talk a little bit about what we're thinking about. The entire purpose of the project is to become more sustainable. We recognize that these wells are not going to last forever. And while you have good production, save it. And that's what we're really trying to do right now. We felt an urgency to get on board and get this job done. So what we're building is what's known as a conjunctive use project. A conjunctive use project is kind of a combination of surface water and well water. When the surface water produces, you don't need your wells. When the surface water, for whatever reason, drought or what have you, doesn't produce, you've got your wells to back you up. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach to solving the problem. In the future, we expect to be about 90% renewable and 10% Denver Basin. The result will be we'll transition away from Denver Basin, and by doing so, we're actually preserving that Denver Basin groundwater, not only for Triview, but for the region. The other thing that I think is important to think about is the importance of the storage opportunities that we're building in the Arkansas. The South Reservoir is about 1,850 acre feet. The Central Reservoir is about 8,000 acre feet. So it's huge. And it's far more water, far more storage than we would ever need. However, there's opportunities for others to come and partner with us in the construction of the Central Reservoir. So this is the two things to take away from this slide are really pretty basic. Triview's demand in 2030, which is when we expect to build out, is going to be about 2,200 acre feet. Our current demand right now is about 1,000. So with the commercial development that we're seeing and the 1,000 homes that we're expecting to see in the future, our total demand is going to be right about 2,200 acre feet. Obviously, it depends on the year. And you have a hot, dry summer, it's going to be a little bit closer to 2,400. A little cooler summer, it's probably more like 2,000. So that kind of gives you a flavor of where we're at right now. So here's a picture of the South Reservoir. Go ahead and change it. Yeah, do hit one more. There you go. Perfect. So that's the South Reservoir, and that's looking from basically southeast to northwest. And if you look kind of up behind those clouds, you can see Pikes Peak up there. So this reservoir right now in this picture has about 1,500 acre feet in it. Now let's talk a little bit about the Northern Delivery System. That's the project everybody's been hearing a lot about, probably dealing with a lot in your lives. This is a picture right here of the pump station that will pump water from Colorado Springs Utilities Highway 83 tank north to Triview. This is the foundation. This was taken about 2 weeks ago, but it's coming along. The pump station itself, the building that sits on this foundation, will be probably constructed in early November. The plan is to have all the pipeline laid, and this is the last portion of the project right here. The routing, if you kind of go ahead and change that, thank you. The routing is basically starts in the lower right-hand corner with that blue little tank. And you can see the water or the pipeline coming kind of in a, just kind of almost a Z shape. The red right there before it hits the yellow is Old Northgate Road. Then it goes north up Roller Coaster Road all the way up to Baptist Road. And then it goes to the west and it goes across Baptist Road, goes cross country through that turquoise line to what we call our C plant tank. So that is all constructed. What we decided to do rather than, we're using some of our distribution system. So it kind of minimized the cost of actually building a lot more pipe. So we use some of our existing distribution system. So you'll see the kind of magenta color going across Sanctuary and then a blue line going down to what we call the B plant. And so all that piping is done. We also had to build that other magenta colored line. We called that segment C. And that goes up through actually Jackson Creek 3 through 6. So it kind of goes cross country through the mouse habitat up along the boundary between Jackson Creek 6 and Home Place Ranch. And then we've built over here on the far left-hand side what we called segment D1, which is a bore underneath I-25. That piece of pipe is already installed. And then the last little section is about 1,000 feet. It's called section D2. And that is a section of pipe that goes through the Connexus subdivision. We were all set to build that pipe about a year and a half ago. And when things didn't work out well for Connexus, they kind of abandoned ship, and we picked up all of our pipe that we had distributed across the field, picked it up, brought it back to our plant. Well, we still have the pipe, and our goal is to install that little dashed line hopefully this fall, so that that piece of pipe is there and is ready to go. So this is just kind of a brief description of where we are actually at in the construction of the Northern Delivery System. We are about 110 days into this project as far as construction goes. We've got most of the pipeline, in fact, all of the pipeline constructed within the Triview Metropolitan District, with the exception of that 1,000 feet in Connexus. We've tied in all of the existing Triview system. Work in Baptist Road is complete. Work on roller coaster should be completed the first or second week. I'm going to fudge a little bit on when we get done in roller coaster. We've encountered a lot of nastiness down at the lower southern end, a lot of fiber optics, gas lines, what have you, and it slowed the crews down considerably. But nevertheless, by the middle of October, we're done. Work will be started on the Highway 83. Work completed from the pump station to Highway 83. Work on the Old North Gate Road is completed. Power for the pump station is starting to be installed next week. So they had hoped to start October 2nd. They pushed it a week. We're revegetating all of the disturbed areas. We'll be mill and overlay all of roller coaster and Old North Gate Road. So that will be done, we hope, by the end of October. So we're praying actually for a nice warm fall. And then, like I say, the pump station is started, but it will not be completed until July. So by early July next year, this project is done and capable of delivering water. So what we've been trying to think of is staff and boards from Triview is, how can this project help the town of Monument, not only now, but in the future? Currently, you guys have your 100% groundwaters, obviously, you know. There's about 13 Denver Basin wells that produce a total of about 1,250 gallons per minute through all of those wells. Max day is difficult to meet as your town grows and homes get built. That 1,250 gallons per minute is may or may not be sufficient. Probably is if they're all the wells are pumping, but you know how that goes. They never always seem to work. There's always one or two broken down. So what we've thought about is, how can we perhaps install some sort of a metered system that would allow you to take advantage of the fact that this pipeline that we're installing this fall is really only maybe a couple hundred feet from your distribution system. And I think that all that you really have to do once we get that 16-inch installed all the way across is about 200 feet of pipe and a metering station. So this is kind of what we've talked about as a proposal that may be able to get things moving for the town of Monument. We believe that when Colorado Springs looked at the overall demand, they recognized that the town of Monument could benefit greatly from 683,000 gallons a day. So we've kind of sized our facilities around that concept of 683,000 gallons a day being delivered to the town of Monument. That's basically 17.075% of the Northern Delivery System. The Northern Delivery System has an overall delivered capacity of about 4 MGD. We're going to take up about 2.5 initially, and maybe upwards of about 3 going forward. But right now, the NDS has some excess capacity. So the total project cost, and this is one of the real advantages of doing a guaranteed maximum price with a contractor, is we know within a few $1,000s of what this pipeline is going to cost. And it's $26,104,255. The only variable expense in that is how much engineering and, construction management might take place. But all in all, that's probably within $100,000 of that figure. So what we're looking at is if Monument were to invest $6,457,302, that we would ensure that you received your water from the Northern Delivery System. We would do the permitting costs with Pueblo County. We do the Pueblo County, El Paso County 1041s. And we would revise our excess storage capacity contract with Pueblo Reservoir and other contractual revisions as needed. The annual delivered capacity would be approximately 400 acre feet per year. I think your current delivery capacity, with your maximum build out, is a little over 700. So this would be 400 acre feet. You would need a 3-inch meter size from Colorado Springs Utilities. We contracted for a 6-inch. Monument would have to contract for a 3-inch, but that price can be financed at 3.14% for 25 years. So your annual payment is $154,496. The bottom line is Triview would provide this water at $13.14 per 1,000 gallons. Your current water rate's sitting at about 12 right now, and expected to stay at 12, I think, in 2024, if I read your rate sheets correctly. We would basically deliver water, any water that we would capture, water that we would run down Fountain Creek to the Arkansas and capture and exchange into Pueblo, and then wheel back through. That water we would do for $10.50 a thousand. So the total capital investment is $6,457,302. So call it $6.5 million plus an annual payment for the metering, and you guys would be off and running. So that is our proposal. It's, I think, a fair proposal. I think it gets you in the game early. So this is what I'm proposing. You could begin receiving water from Triview as soon as the metering station is installed and 1,000 feet of pipeline is constructed. Triview will pay for the pipeline, and Triview could build the metering station with reimbursement from Monument. Estimated completion date June 1st, 2024. Estimated ND Northern Delivery completion date July 1st, 2025. We would capture return flows using both our Pueblo Reservoir account as well as our Stonewall Springs account. And basically this provides a bridge to the future so that you have time to participate and perhaps do other projects. There may be local reuse projects you're studying, the loop obviously you're studying. That would give you time to get this figured out and preserve that well water. Now, the last thing I'm going to say, and this is just not some high pressure pitch to try to get you to make a decision, but we do need to know now, because we're in the process of going through water court with our water rights decrees. If we have to start making changes and doing adjustments to our Pueblo Reservoir if and when account, we have to do it now, because we cannot go into next July not having a source of supply. So we are very interested in helping and working with the town of Monument. It's just that we need to move on and decide. So that's all I've got tonight. Obviously, Chris is here, I'm here, our board's here. Happy to answer any questions.
So you're going to get questions, I'm sure.
I can't imagine I wouldn't.
Before any of us cut a check for $6.5 million, what is your answer by date? Do you have a guesstimate?
We'd like to know something by the end of the month, early November.
Okay.
Because we're starting to get into the budget season. I need to know.
Same.
And
Yeah.
exactly.
So we're going to ask questions, I'm sure. I'm going to hold mine off because I'm sure someone's going to ask my question. You get to go last because you know too much. So we'll start down here.
Can we go back to slide 27, just have slide 27? How much for that?
Is that the one?
Had the pricing, I didn't see any military discounts.
Well, especially since he lives next to one of the water tanks. What does a tap for him go for?
It's baked in.
It's baked in.
I don't
Oh.
I don't get special privileges.
Senna,
And he
what
doesn't
questions do you
complain
have?
very much, which I'm grateful for.
Well, I do have something.
Mine's fairly quick. Well, maybe. So I appreciate you guys being preemptive. I think that that's really important because we are going to run into trouble sooner than I think people realize. And it is quite a bit in terms of capital investment that's due. But what would happen? I'll just play devil's advocate if we did not participate. How does this affect you guys? And let's just say we didn't have the money.
It does not affect us.
Okay.
We built the pipeline such that it was, when we built the pipeline, it was going to originally be a 24-inch.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized the interest wasn't there, so we reduced it to a 16. And the 16 still has 4 million gallons of capacity. So the pipes laid, the pump station's built.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a year to get these pumps and electrical equipment. So everything is going to just keep on chugging. We don't have to modify any of our 1041 applications. We don't have to change any of our water right decrees. Everything just stays status quo. So this is an opportunity that I thought it was important that we present.
Of course.
Because, we're moving along. But if you decided not to participate, that's
Okay.
it doesn't affect our economics or anything.
Okay.
We're paying cash for the Northern delivery system, which is a good place to be.
Can I quibble with that answer just a little bit?
Sure.
Short term, it doesn't affect Triview or Triview residents, but long term, whatever happens on the west side of Monument is going to directly affect the east side of Monument. So long term, whatever we decide for this side of Monument, it will directly affect the rest of us because we're all Monument. And so whatever path we choose for the town, it will affect everybody. That's
Can you
long
give specifics on how the decision made for the west side residents impacts those on the east?
so let's say, and I don't want to be, and I'm not here to be Chicken Little, but let's say that we have a really bad drought because we don't have those here. Let's say that we have a really bad drought, right? Triview is using NDS and its storage systems. We, the rest of Monument, are on wells that are usually maybe are able to produce. So that's something that I want for the board to really truly keep in mind. And it's something that Jim McGrady has hit a couple times, is that relying only on wells, hope is not a strategy. So hoping that the wells continue to produce at the same level year over year. Okay, the example I was given when I was being educated by that guy in the green shirt is, think of when you're drinking from a straw and you keep adding straws to the same drink, you're pulling less and less. Okay, so I'm not trying to be Chicken Little. And when I researched this on my own, the USGS and the CGS, the Colorado Geologic Society, they don't have a good way of assessing wells, the aquifer, excuse me. They just don't. It's a black art, black because it's just not possible. And so we're going off of hope right now. Everybody that's on wells is going off of hope, and hope is not a strategy. So short term, it doesn't affect Triview. From a economic perspective, long term, it affects all of us economically, because the last thing you want to read on the paper is someone is out of water. Because even if, let's say Forest View, or is it Forest Lakes, let's say it's, X is out of water. The entities around whomever runs out of water, whether they have water or not, their home prices just tanked, and the commercial prices just tanked because they're out of water. So that's the only cautionary piece I would add. Maybe it's the intel analyst in me that's always looking at the negative, but it's just, that's what keeps me up at night. It is that piece is 5 years from now. It's not tomorrow. Please don't go home and sell your house tomorrow. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 10 years from now. That's what keeps me up at night, because we all need this town viable forever.
Let's continue along that string. It's wonderful not to rest on your hope and your laurels and all. I get that. But if you don't have 6.5 million and 154,000 a month,
No.
a year. Okay. But let's take that to the next step.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for that? The customers are going to pay for that. So how much does that add to their bill? I'm one of them.
Yeah.
We all are, or will be eventually. And who then controls what the ultimate cost is going to be? And let's face it, we're all talking about cost, and we're all, if you sell your house, it doesn't matter whether or not, but it does matter from a utility perspective, how much are you paying? If it's more than your mortgage, you got a problem.
Well, then you
Okay.
still have to think the same way with just doing the loop system itself. It's someone's, customers.
We haven't heard the loop yet. So can we stick to questions for, okay, because that way everybody who's got them in their head can get them out, and Mr. McGrady can pass on his knowledge. Well, I'd rather just, otherwise we'll be going back and forth. So do you have any questions?
I'm done.
Okay, questions?
I do. Just to clarify for citizens, being a part of this doesn't change whether we can pump our own wells or not. Is that correct, Mr. Foreman? Being a part of this delivery system doesn't change the fact whether we can pump our wells or not, correct?
No, either system, if we join the loop or the NDS, will provide less reliance on our wells.
That's all. Okay, great. I'd like to hear Mr. Foreman and Mr. Tharnish's opinions on this.
I would rather staff save those for afterwards. if
Okay, that's
okay with
fine.
you. Yep.
Okay, I'd like to hear Mr. Tharnish's opinions, though. He's our best water guy that we have. So the two questions that I have then, which I've been involved in this for a long time. One is, what is Colorado Springs' control of water costs on the way up? And how long is that? And what say do we have in that? Or do they have us by the bank, so to speak?
I think these water rights or these water costs that Colorado Springs has, they're tariff rates. So they're within their tariff, and they are not contractual. So the fact that they're part of their tariff means that if Colorado Springs residents see an increase in their rates, which we're bound to have with inflation and what have you, if their rates go up, chances are the delivered price for this water from Colorado Springs will go up. But
Is there-
it's not like they can increase your rates more and our rates more than what they It has to be justified. It has to be based upon a cost of service.
Is there something in a service agreement or a contract that says that? Okay. My next question, my next question then is the storage. You talked about storage along the Arkansas and having that is important. Who would own, control, or cost measure that storage?
Right.
Okay. And what control would we have in that cost if we were part of your system?
The way I've got this calculated, you're benefiting from the use of this storage. We were able to purchase this storage at approximate cost of $4,000 an acre foot. And we own that 1,650, actually a little bit more than that, about 1,700 acre feet of storage. We own that right now. We built it, it's paid for. We got a loan from CWCB at 2.05% interest. It's finished. The price that I'm quoting here includes the storage.
My next and last point then, I guess, on a question or comment would be, make sure I have everything before I pass this along, because I know there's a lot of people that have comment, is if we annex up to county line. I had a meeting and I believe our now mayor was involved, our town manager was involved, and I know how Pueblo feels about any drop of water going on the wrong side of the hill is, and it makes it very unfeasible for us to be part of this if we annex up there and try to develop anything. Do you have any comment on that? It's almost impossible.
It makes it difficult. I'm not going to say impossible, but it makes it
Oh,
difficult.
very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's probably ways to work around it. I'm not going to speculate what those ways are.
They don't want to open up that again. They don't want to open that permit up to everything and environmental, so everything's going to come into
Our
that.
delivery system, our contracts are based around the concept that you will not serve over the hill.
Okay.
If you do, then that's, I hate to say it,
Well,
but that's kind of.
the citizens and everyone need to be aware of that. Okay. That's okay. That's all I got.
Okay, I've got a couple. So you said June 1st, 2024, you would be ready to service the town. So my question would be to staff. Assuming that June 1st rolls around and we have a pipe ready to connect to, and money wasn't an object, how quickly can the town be connected to the system?
My perspective on that is if the pipeline was there and the metering vault was installed, then it wouldn't be very long at all to take water from that system into ours. But we'd have to look at, pressures and how that's going to affect our system.
I assume that there'd be engineer work behind it, but if the money wasn't an issue and the pipe was there, how quickly would we get this on a project to be connected to it?
If cost is not an issue, it could be almost done immediately, because how far, Jim, are we away from, we're about, yeah, they've got is it a 12-inch line on the east side, and we've got a 12-inch line on the west side of Old Denver Road. Right. Yeah. So we'd extend a 12 to their 16.
So by fall of 2024, is that feasible?
I think it's very feasible.
Okay. You said upfront fee, 6.5 million. The 3-inch meter would be 155,000 annually. Or was he close with the $12 per 1,000 gallons? That's our rate.
I'd have to verify that. Our rates have changed every year up to, I think we got one more year of rate increases.
We can
we'll
get
have
you
to
that
see what
information.
that equates to.
So, but 14 is not, this isn't going to break banks, right?
It's not out of line. It's going to be a rate increase for the customers today.
Right. It will be a rate increase. Do we have an idea of what?
We can get you that information. We've just seen this, so we can get you that information.
Okay. Okay, so here's one for you. We have been listening to the water system pitches. I've heard it now 4 times, I think. 5? Thanks for keeping track.
I'm not counting.
And, and I'm still, aside from the 1041 requirement and the molecules going to District 1, why are we not joining the systems together and taking advantages of the best of both worlds?
That's what we're trying to do.
So
That's
is
what
it in
we're-
your future plan to have the loop connected to NDS?
I don't know how that, I'm not familiar with how the loop proposes to do it, but there is certainly capacity. I don't know how the loop is configured. I have no clue. But the capacity is, there's 4 million gallons of capacity. We thought that was the right amount. Obviously, in the wintertime, there's a lot more than in the summertime.
Right.
Our wintertime demands are probably going to be in the neighborhood of about, maybe 750,000 gallons in the wintertime. So there's, let's just call it 1 million. There's 3 million gallons in the wintertime that's available. If you have storage at the end of your pipe, then there is potential to utilize and fill your storage in the wintertime. Storage is key, whether it's on the end of the pipe or at the beginning of the pipe. Wherever you have your storage, you can utilize it. You can use aquifer storage and recovery. It's expensive, but you can do it. So you can use your aquifers. You can recharge your aquifers.
That is expensive, and it's proven to be an issue nationwide of municipalities recharging their aquifers.
Right. So it's there, but you've got surface storage, whether it's Monument Lake, whether it's Lake Woodmore, whether it's, whatever, Bristlecone. I mean, there's some storage up here.
Okay.
That could be beneficial.
That's all the questions I had. Mr. King?
I'm gonna request these guys go because I have probably more questions than anybody, and they might answer most of them.
Well, so I don't think so. But,
On down.
Mr. McGrady, you said right now it's present for Triview to service probably about 1,000 acre foot.
For a year, that's our current demand is about 1,000 acre feet. That's correct. Somewhere in that area.
What is the average home?
About 4/10 of an acre foot per year. Once again, depends on if it's a wet or dry year, but yeah, somewhere around 4/10 of an acre foot.
So this is blessed and you connect to the town. What happens if somewhere in the line there's a break or stoppage that has to be there? What is the backup?
The backup is most pipeline repairs can be accomplished in 2 to 3 days, top end. That's why you have storage in your tanks. That's why you have your wells. So it's a combination of water that you have stored and your wells.
With the connection to the town, water could be pumped into
That was originally, I think, the intent of building that tank was to take advantage of this water supply.
on one of your slides, you showed 2 water tanks. Are those?
Let me see them.
Were those new build tanks or were they existing tanks?
Those are existing tanks.
Existing
What the one in the middle of the screen, I just put it back up there.
Segment B?
Yeah, that's right next to, that's the B plant. That's near your home. And
I
the
just
other
didn't know
one,
if there was going to be another tank being built.
we are looking at building a second tank at that site. We're
And-
looking at
Your backyard.
No, not about that. It's okay. But in segment C, the other question, in segment C, you're saying that pipeline is completed and that's going
Yes.
through
That goes.
part of Promontory Point through Home Place Ranch. Oh, I'm sorry, Jackson Creek.
Yes, that's completed.
Jackson Creek through Home Place Ranch. Is there
And then there's, what's not shown are the various Ts that come off of that.
Yeah, that's
and
what I was
tie
wondering.
into the distribution system.
That's what I was
already been
wondering. Yeah,
built.
okay.
So it looks to me like it's hanging out there.
Yeah.
This is a pipe that Triview built and paid for.
Okay.
There's 3 Ts off of that pipe that ties into the distribution system that was constructed by the developer.
Okay. I'm not marking anything off his questions, so I apologize, but I do want to thank you for your presentation, your detailed presentation. I also want to thank Jason, Mark, and I believe that Steve didn't acknowledge you guys when I first came in, but I appreciate you guys coming here for support for Team Triview. Greatly appreciated what you guys do for the east side, and so that's it.
Okay,
Go
Marco,
ahead, Marco.
questions?
Lay it up, Marco.
Questions?
Yes. Okay. You mentioned priority storage and seniority rights. Can you remind me, re-educate me on priority storage and seniority rights? What does that mean to
Okay, when
a knuckle dragger?
When water rights are administered, the most senior right are the oldest rights.
Okay.
And then as you drop down, you look at how much water is in a stream,
Yep.
how much water rights are available for diversion.
Okay.
And obviously, there's always going to be more water rights than there are flows in the stream. So the name of the game is to have water rights that are senior, such that they're always going to get their water based upon the average flow in the stream.
Okay.
The worst thing that can happen is if you have a very junior water right that never comes into priority, because there's so many water rights above you. So what you're looking for is you're looking for a water right that's senior, that's capable of being diverted in most cases. And when I talk about storage, what I'm talking about is there's 2 ways to look at storage. Like Pueblo Reservoir is just an empty bucket. It does not have a priority date by which it can store. It actually does, but it's like 1962. So it doesn't do much good. So what you want is a water right that has an ability to sometimes the storage right to come into priority so you can store water. Big Johnson is that right. It has about a 1906 storage right. On March, actually it's on November 15th of every single year from November 15th to March 15th. The call shifts by decree to March 1st, 1910. Big Johnson is 1906. So it stores every single winter because the call always shifts to March 1st, 1910. So what you're doing is you're storing water in the wintertime in Big Johnson Reservoir every single year. And that's usually plus or minus 5,000 acre feet. Triview gets their share of that, which is about 18%. So right there, that's a guaranteed yield.
Okay.
You also have other rights in the FMIC portfolio ranging from the 4th priority on all of Fountain Creek on down to about the 29th priority. So there's some really good senior rights associated with FMIC. That's why Triview invested in FMIC because number 1, it's fairly close to town. And number 2, it's a very senior right with a senior storage right.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope I answered that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Without breaking executive privilege, can you talk to previous boards' discussions on water rights versus infrastructure and which came first and why previous boards decided water rights before infrastructure?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty logical, it's a good question, but the answer to it is pretty simple. If you go out and you buy a water right, you know where that water right is. And that becomes almost like your home base. And then you can always figure out how to build a pipeline from that point, wherever that water right is, back to your community. If you do it the opposite way and you just go out, I think I'm going to build a pipeline. And then you start looking around and start trying to figure out, well, where is that water going to come from for my pipeline? Two things happen. One, if you're lucky enough to find a water right to put in that pipeline that you just spent millions of dollars on, everybody knows you need that water right. So what happens to the price of that water right? It goes through the roof. So you have to absolutely 100% identify the water rights that you want to purchase. And then you begin to knit your delivery system around those water rights. That's what we did. I mean, we bought FMIC, then we bought Excelsior, and then we bought AVIC, and then we bought Bale. And then we began to knit all those water rights together to figure out how are we going to deliver those. And that was the exercise that we went through. And that's how we put the whole program together.
Okay, thank you. Can you go to the what Jim McGrady called the little cartoon, system, the map, keep going up. Yeah,
There you go.
right there. Okay, so you provided one option, I think, which is stuff going down Arkansas and Fountain Creek and Monument Creek to the Arkansas and then to the Stonewall Springs. Is there an option where you can exchange water with CSU at Twin Lakes or with agriculture? So if agriculture has most of their water is up at Twin Lakes, if I'm correct. And so they're expending a lot of water molecules to have it travel down to south of the Arkansas. We're up north, closer to Twin Lakes. So is there an option, and maybe this is a more of a question for Chris, is there an option to where you could exchange water with at Twin Lakes and have it come from Twin Lakes here, or is that not
That is not in anything that we've
Okay.
put together.
Okay.
In fact, I'm here to tell you, you would have to open up a whole bunch of NEPA
Okay, never mind.
studies and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen.
Okay.
It's just about now.
Yeah.
Now, what we can do, however, is if there's people that have routed this water down from above and they've got it stored in Pueblo and they want to eventually take it downstream further east in the Arkansas,
Okay.
we can make releases out of Stonewall and take their water
At
that
Pueblo.
they've already got stored in Pueblo. So we can trade it that way.
But
But I
not
don't
from,
ever
okay.
want to
Okay.
take it up north. There's no reason to.
Okay. And then last question, when are you guys going to organize a trip to Stonewall Springs? Asking for a friend. All right, that's it.
All right, we'll move on to the next. Oh, did you have questions?
Yeah, but he's got a
So-
couple different ones.
Marco just prompted me for two more questions with his questions. And I'm not sure if you've already answered it or not, or spoke about it, but can you speak at what Triview's doing to look at additional storage plans to grow in case the demand for water exceeds what you have planned right now?
What are we looking at? Storage or water rights?
Yes, both.
Well, the storage is easy. That's a central reservoir project. We own the land, we have it permitted, we have the design completed and approved by the division engineer. So technically, I think we can start moving dirt on that. But as far as additional water rights go, there's options that are out there. We're approached on a not quite a daily basis, but certainly a couple, 3 times a year with options to purchase additional water rights.
Okay.
We have chosen not to pursue those because quite frankly, we have our hands full. We've got darn near $73 million invested in this project as is. I think we have enough water. We've got our wastewater return flows to rely upon. And I think we need to take a breath as far as acquisition goes and see how the system performs. I think we've solved the puzzle. But if in fact I think if we were to do anything, we'd probably look at a more long-term lease.
Okay, last question. And this is regarding the potentially reducing water use. Has Triview Metro that has the east side and parts of the west side, have you guys looked into or applied for the Colorado Turf Replacement Program? That's a state funded program.
We've looked at it. Quite frankly, the payback on turf replacement is somewhat overstated. And it's very expensive to tear out grass. It's very expensive to replace it with xeriscaping or astroturf or stuff like that. So we're not actually participating in that program. We encourage people through with conservation through inclining block rates. We encourage conservation by having even odd watering days. And we try to do our best to encourage people to cut back their growth or cut back their use of irrigation. And Price Signals does a really good job at that. And I think that's kind of what we're focusing on. I saw a story the other day that talked about Las Vegas and about a lot of the studies that you see about turf replacement is in Las Vegas. Well, if you stop and look at Las Vegas, what is the weather like in Las Vegas? It's very, very hot. It doesn't very often get cold in the wintertime, a little bit, but not terribly cold. So they have a much longer irrigation season than what we have here in Colorado. We do maybe 6.5, 7 months. Las Vegas is probably more like 11 months. So they have a lot more use in what we call the shoulder months. And therefore they have a lot more, they can save a lot more water by doing turf replacement than you would here. So that's just kind of a fact of life. So I'm not a big rip out the stuff and put in AstroTurf. Some folks want to do it, great, but there's an economic decision to that. And we'll see where it goes. But we encourage water use or conservation, but certainly don't mandate it.
All right, thanks.
Mr. King.
Okay, so I'm going to get a little into the weeds with this water right thing because it's confusing to me, as all water rights are. Okay, so down at Pueblo Reservoir, you say you have 999 acre feet of excess capacity.
It's so when the Bureau built Pueblo Reservoir, it had basically several different pools. It had conservation pool, it had flood storage, it had all these different types of pools inside the vessel. And some of those areas within the reservoir hardly ever get full. They very rarely fill. So the Bureau contracts for those areas within the reservoir that they don't need. Now, if you have a really, really, really wet year and the Bureau is getting lots and lots of water from the boosted Tonawanda, the turquoise, and maybe even Pueblo does come into priority because it's such a wet year, that reservoir can actually fill. And when it does, it spills out those if and when accounts. So those accounts can in fact be spilled out. Happens once, maybe every 25 years. That's part of the reason why we redeveloped Stonewall Springs, such that if we are spilled out of our account, our if and when account, before that happens, we'll run that water down to Stonewall Springs. That's what we did that for.
Okay, but you have to get, so I'm just trying to understand this. So you're downstream from the southern delivery system. So you have to either exchange the water that you have in Stonewall Springs in order to get it back into Pueblo Reservoir, correct? Is that how it works?
Yep.
So the Stonewall Springs water, that you have to trade that with somebody that needs it downstream. Is that how it
Or I
works?
can do what's called a physical exchange. There's two types of exchanges. There's an actual physical exchange and there's a trade, a water trade. The physical exchange is, imagine 1,000 CFS coming into Pueblo. I shut the gates at Pueblo Reservoir, and now I only release 970 CFS out of Pueblo. Okay, so there's 1,000 coming in, 970 going out. We've shorted the river between Pueblo and Stonewall Springs by 30 CFS. I pay back the river by making a 30 CFS exchange or a release out of Stonewall Springs. We've got 1,000 coming in, 970 leaving Pueblo. Then I add 30 coming in over here from Stonewall. Now the river's whole, it's back to 1,000 CFS. What I've done is I've physically exchanged 30 CFS into Pueblo Reservoir. So that's the physical exchange. The other is just a trade. Somebody in Pueblo wants my water, and then I'll give them, I have empty space. They give me their water, and I give them a like amount in Stonewall Springs. So that's a trade. So there's two ways to move water, either trade or physical exchange.
But so if you couldn't get it back into Pueblo, then the backup plan is to buy water from CSU if you didn't have enough. Is that how that would work?
My backup plan would be to pump my wells.
Okay.
And the thing is there's usually exchange potential up into Pueblo.
Okay.
Usually. Very rare that there's not. So you know when there's going to be exchange potential. The exchange potential occurs basically during runoff. That's why we built such a hefty pump down here at Stonewall Springs, so that I can move 60 acre-feet a day upstream into Pueblo. That's easily done during the summertime. It's not easily done in the spring or the fall of the year. And it's not done at all in the wintertime. So you have to know the river, you have to know how to move that water, and you have to know who your trading partners are. So it's kind of a, you got to know how to do it.
Okay. And you said earlier that you had an agricultural partner or something down there that was taking water right now. Is that somebody that's invested in this system, or is just a trading partner?
It's a trading partner.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So you also talked about contracts. I guess it's the contract with CSU. It's a 25-year contract for 450 acre feet.
That's actually, it could be a 25-year, that's for a water supply.
Okay.
That 25-year is a water lease from Pueblo Board of Water.
Gotcha.
Up to 25 years.
So what about the contract with the CSU? You have to have a contract with them in order to use the pipes, correct?
To move that water, yes, sir.
And so how long is that for?
That's a 25-year contract as well.
25 years?
The contract with the Bureau is 40 with the Pueblo Reservoir. All of these are renewable contracts, but they're nevertheless, all contracts have a term.
Right. Okay. And then did I hear you correct? You said you could provide 400 acre feet to Monument. Is that what you said? And we need 700
At build out.
at build out, right? So we're be 300 acre feet short. Are those numbers correct, Tom? 700 feet at build out?
By our calculations, we're at full build out in 2035. We're just under 800, like
800.
790 something.
So we'd be short, and there's no way to increase that capacity,
There
or
is.
That's where also water rights purchases come in, which is another thing that one of my other hobby horses on this council, which is not just the return flows, but purchasing water rights.
So this is a 25-year lease. It's could be 400, could be 450, it could be 500. I mean, you could do anything you wanted. We were looking at a reasonable amount of water for your demand today, and then allow you to grow into it if you so desired. You do the loop project. There's other I just wanted to get you from point A to point B. It was not
Sure.
designed to be the permanent.
Reason I'm asking is because if at some point in time, if we needed to be 100% renewable water, if we could do that or not.
I think that there's a way.
Um,
I don't know that there'd be a way for you to be 100%. I'm not gonna, I think there's always going to be a need to run your wells.
well, I assume that too, but just theoretically speaking. So, and then this, just so I'm clear on this too, this 6.5 million, does that buy 17% of this, of the ownership in the Northern Delivery System? Is that what that
Yeah, yes,
17% was in
And
there?
it also buys access to some of our storage vessels. That buys permitting changes, all of that.
Okay. And then the pricing on the $13 per thousand and $10.50 per thousand for the reclamation part of it, that, how long would that be guaranteed for?
Probably until the next increase that we see.
So that would be
Which-
tied to CSU.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of that pricing is convey, treat, and deliver costs.
Right. So on that, so you're not paying CSU's rate plus 50%. You're paying a different rate because you have water rights downstream and you're in essence renting certain parts of the pipe plus the convey and treat.
We're paying for convey, treat, deliver. We have our own molecules to put into the mix.
So what comes out of there is the cost of the water. Okay, understood.
And I'm going to talk into my microphone. If everybody could, we're hearing from some of the citizens, they can't hear you. So if you could talk into your microphones and make sure they're on. Thank you.
Yeah, mine's on. That's all the questions I have. A lot of them got answered already, so thank you.
Okay. Couple things for staff, and this would probably be applicable for both solutions. After all is said and done, and we've got the slide deck and the proposals from both solutions, before the next meeting, I would like the water department to give us what their expected rate would be for Monuments customers, based on the proposals. The other thing is, I assume, I'm just making an assumption the council would like to, since we're making a decision for the customers on the west side, I would like to see the council have a copy of what we expect the rate would be for both proposals. Okay. Also, I would like to see how the infrastructure costs would be funded. We heard 6.5 million for this proposal. Given that Mr. McGrady would like an answer by Halloween, we're gonna have to crunch some numbers, I imagine, but I would like to know from the staff how we're gonna fund that for both NDS and for Loop, and that we also have that before the next meeting, because we would have to be making a decision by the next meeting. 2 weeks, in 2 weeks.
And if you need the first week.
Oh, you'll give us the first week of November?
Let me
So
clarify
gracious.
something, Mayor. Jim, when you're saying we need to make a decision by October, you're not asking us to give you $6 million in October, right?
No.
Right. That would be commitment, just firm commitment, and then payments would be structured out in the future.
So on or about 6 November is the,
He's asking for a raise.
yeah.
It's the election?
No, that's, that would be first Tuesday, right? Yeah, 7th, right before the election.
We'll figure it out. I just wanted to make sure, before I forgot, that staff heard some direction so that we know by mid-month.
That would be helpful.
We need to
Sure.
buy a lot of scratcher cards.
I'm going to get some scratchers, Powerball. Ms. McGrady, thank you again
You're welcome.
for that presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The town won't get a tax on that lot
Marco will pay the tax. We're going to take 5 minutes real quick. Take 5 minutes, give the Loop Authority a chance to set up. All right, we're gonna call the meeting back to order
Spicy Italian.
and I don't believe we met.
No.
Okay, so there's a stranger amongst us from where are you from, sir?
Hello, my name is John Kuzman. I'm representing the Loop Water Authority. I was hired by the Loop Water Authority about 3 months ago to be their project planning and workflow manager. I work for a company called American Company, which is the largest engineering and architecture firm headquartered in Colorado. So really pleased to be here. It's pretty exciting that your community is on the horizon of water scarcity and thinking ahead. And you're reviewing two options here that really set up your community for the long term. So I was really excited to be here and present. You said this is like the 6th time you guys have seen this, so we're trying to freshen it up a little bit here.
Some of us are from the previous board
Yeah.
or two, and so we've gone through the last time we went through it. There was a meal included. I'm not sure why there's no food here, but well, huh?
Jesse's.
I
gone
know,
before.
right? I should have ordered. Can we Uber something over here or something? That's good. All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing what's new and
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. So the Loop Water Authority is very similar to what you just saw. It's all about creating resilient water supplies for North El Paso County, but there are a few subtle differences. I'll go through this presentation fairly quickly since you've seen it before, try to highlight some of the major differences between the NDS system, but still telling you the story of the Loop Authority. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the Loop Authority is a little play on the slogan, all for one and one for all. There are 4 entities represented by the Loop Authority. So part of the question and answers, I'm going to be joined by Amy Lathan from Cherokee Metropolitan District. Denala is a member of the Loop Authority. We're hoping that the town of Monument becomes a member of the Loop Authority. Monument's been a participatory member, has contributed financial $200,000 to fund the initial studies of this. And then finally, Jesse Schaefer will be up and during questions and answers from Woodmore Water and Sanitation District number 1. All of us are located in El Paso County, and we are cooperating together again to supply a high quality potable water and renewable supply through a loop water system. It's a piped system that brings water, return waters, renewable waters back into North El Paso County. Next slide. Okay, I can give you a little bit of history. So these entities, these 4 entities have had a long history of collaboration dating all the way back before 2017. Keep going. One more. At the end of 2019, these entities were working together very closely with Colorado Springs Utilities, And at the end of that, that's about the time that Colorado Springs published the convey, treat, and deliver extension of that tariff agreement that Jim mentioned earlier. That became a transition point for these four entities to consider going and looking at renewable supplies in a different way and in a way that didn't rely on a third-party agreement with Colorado Springs Utilities. Next slide. So that began this new approach. That's when they started investigating this loop water supply concept. The Loop Water Authority was actually formed in December of 2022. And then this agency got funding from El Paso County in an ARPA grant in the amount of $4 million to fund the governance, the planning, the financing, and ultimately the initial design of the loop water system that we're going to talk about. Next slide. And so where we're at a little different place than the NDS. We are doing a lot of the due diligence work that the NDS has already completed, okay? But the intention of that is reflected back to being the same, if not better, financially than any agreement that relies on Colorado Springs convey, treat, or deliver. And not only from the financial side, there are agreements in those, there are terms in those structures in terms of duration, priority, that the Loop Authority would like to avoid in creating this separate loop water system. So where are we at? We do know that this system will cost between $150 and $200 million total capital cost. That's the NDS wasn't only $6.5 million like you were asked to pay. It was a bigger cost. Similar to this, when this is fully, all the due diligence is vetted, you will be asked to pay a portion of that total cost. But we are not in a position to present that because there's additional due diligence that's needed to be done. Okay, okay, so real quickly, go ahead and scroll through all these. So what is the loop water system? So we go back to the recycling jargon, and it's all about the three R's. First of all, same thing as Northern NDS. Get off of the Denver Basin groundwater as best you can. What's unique about the loop water system is there's a lot of repurposing of existing assets that the member agencies own. And that's one of the reasons this group is confident that they can deliver the price, deliver the total project in a rate that's competitive to convey, treat, and deliver with a lot more autonomy. And then finally, reusing, again, this is all about the future and multiple generations down the road. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the map. So quickly, first build here. We're reducing one more, you know, it looks like a shotgun spray pattern here in North El Paso with all the wells into both the Denver Basin, the Arapahoe Formation. And so the idea is to lessen the dependence on that. Wells are having to go deeper. The capital cost for each of those wells is significant. Member agencies of the loop are trying to avoid that. Second, repurposing. So we're going to go through a couple of the facilities that need to be repurposed. They all have water reclamation facilities in here, and there's a reusable return flows that comes from those facilities. So capturing the benefit of that treatment. Next. Member agencies of the Loop Authority have majority shares in the Chilcot Ditch. That becomes a very nice conveyance mechanism to convey flows for storage. The NDS talked a lot about storage. The Loop Authority has storage in Calhan Reservoir, has the ability to expand reservoir storage in Calhan Reservoir, and the Chilcot Ditch is an existing conveyance mechanism to do that without having to go all the way down to Pueblo Reservoir for that. Next. I talked about storage in Calhan. Next. And then finally, the loop has an asset called can you go back one more? I'm sorry. Called the Sundance Pipeline. Cherokee built that pipeline. with the purpose for delivering well water from the north part of El Paso County down into the Cherokee District. They are offering that asset to the Loop Authority as one of the ways to save money and make this system more complete and avoid new capital for that segment of the pipeline. Next slide. Keep going. Okay, so again, treated effluent from your wastewater plants. Next. Like the NDS, the Loop Water Authority has water rights. They have those rights secured, and it starts with Denala has a surface water right. Next. Woodmore has a significant surface water right. And so all of those can be used, and the initial modeling has included monuments growth projections, full build out projections in the modeling, so that unlike the NDS, there's not a shortfall that's identified right now. Modeling for the Loop Authority has all of monuments water needs identified in that analysis. Next slide. Okay, there will be some new infrastructure that's required for the Loop Authority in that $150 to $250 million. There's likely to be expanded storage in Calhan Reservoir, but that can be phased. That may not be needed in these early years, and initial analysis are showing that that storage can be phased in over time. That allows for cash flow and revenue generation to occur over time, rather than having to front the cost for that expanded storage right out of the gate. Next. There will be new treatment and pumping that's required as well. So rather than rely on Colorado Springs utilities for the treatment component, the Loop Authority is going to be building that treatment component themselves, and that's part of the capital cost. Next. There will be there'll be pumping stations and pipelines to convey from that treatment to the Sundance pipeline owned by Cherokee. And there will be, next please, there'll be additional pipeline and pumping to convey it from the end of the Sundance pipeline into the end of the system, which is the town of Monument. Next, please. Okay. All of this is intended to bolster a supply, again, that gets you off of the Denver aquifer. Next. These four entities cooperating together provides economy of scale, especially when you're not reliant on a third party as the intermediary in there. So there is no, with the NDS, there is a rate above the convey, treat, and deliver rate. This is the rate that's created by the Loop Authority, and the terms of that agreement are set by the Loop Authority. And so there is potential for more control and a seat at the table to minimize those future increases, whereas the others, you're depending on a third party and you're subject to those rate increases from that convey, treat, and deliver agreement. Next slide. Okay, this is talking about resiliency. Bless you. Thank you. Resiliency is not only in the near term, but it's over the duration. One of the challenges with the convey, treat, and deliver agreement is that it's limited to a 25-year term in it. The benefits of a Loop Water Authority is those terms, those agreements could be negotiated for a longer term than that, which is more in line with the life of this infrastructure. This infrastructure is 50-year infrastructure. Next. And then finally, this is inclusive, okay? There are opportunities for Monument, there's opportunities for Fountain, there are opportunities for Colorado Springs utilities. And so a lot of the collaboration that makes NDS happen, those are not off the table in the Loop Water Authority as well. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to try from my perspective to summarize some of the big differences that we see from the Loop Authority from NDS. Okay, first of all, no third-party agreement required to achieve the value of a similar water system. Okay, so the Loop Water Authority will have complete control of the sizing of the infrastructure and the phasing. They are not going to be paying for investment fees that Colorado Springs has made to serve other customers and to harness a whole portfolio of water rights. The water rights that the Loop Authority has achieved are for these systems only. Okay, complete control of the service agreements with the member agencies. That gives you cost and delivery certainty for beyond a 25-year period. Next. Complete control of future costs and the operating strategy. So it's not Colorado Springs who's conveying, treating, and delivering this water. It's the Loop Water Authority. And if you're on the board, you all have control of that conveyance, treatment, and delivery going forward. And I just tell you, we are all wish we had done all the work necessary to present pricing to you today. But we have done a significant amount of due diligence to this, and the model is showing really high yields from this system, and it's showing prices that are right now beating that convey, treat, and deliver price. What's missing is the cash flow component from the member agencies and the timing of a couple of the infrastructure components and the sizing. But we feel confident here that we're ultimately going to produce the value that other systems are going to provide. Next slide. Second big difference from NDS, opportunities for future local value creation. Okay, a 4-entity agreement that has funding from El Paso County could become a platform for regionalization discussions. I know Mayor LaKine, that's been something you've been really interested in, a big advocate. This Loop Authority could be a platform for broader regional collaborations beyond the Loop water system as well. This 4-agency entity can be a platform for political influence and gathering other funding opportunities. It opens the door for other water supplies that, we talked about there potentially being a shortfall with the NDS and the need to maybe secure other water supplies. This opens that same pathway as well. And then this being at the table early, which you have an opportunity to do so, creates value. And then when you sell other deliveries in the future, the original members are the principal beneficiaries of that going forward. Next slide, please. Yep, next slide. Okay, so moving forward, the next step are a lot around the timing and the cash flows required to firm up the delivery costs and to deliver the infrastructure sizing. And as part of that, then those get memorialized in terms of agreements of member agencies into the Loop Authority. So member agencies are committing water supplies, they're also committing physical infrastructure, and they're also contributing financial contributions. Those are all memorialized in agreements. And so that's really the next focus within the next year and then the year beyond. And then go ahead and go to the final slide. So we're here because we think this is a really good solution that avoids third-party entanglements. So we're asking you, let's collaborate to deliver water that's reliable, renewable, and resilient. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions or take any comments you might have.
Okay. I know that at previous meetings that we've had and we've gone through this, there were numbers. Something's changed. I can't say that I'm not disappointed that this council will not have the opportunity, especially given some deadlines, to understand what the cost is, because the 7 of us are going to be making a decision for 2,000 monument customers and we're not going to have the data to do it. I think you should revisit the ability to provide us numbers before the next meeting. Something's changed since the previous meetings, especially given the fact that this has been on the books now since what you said, 2017. You must have encountered something to make you pull the numbers back to not be sure that they were accurate. 150 to 250 million is a big gap, right? I know that we discussed how Monument was going to be able to participate in this, and now we have like no data. And I really wish from a regional perspective, both solutions were able to come to terms to connect, because this isn't really like a sales job. We're concerned about the water for the entire region, which I think the last numbers we spoke about is over 100,000 people, right? So this is fine. I want the council to ask whatever questions they have, but I think the loop needs to come back with some numbers, because in order for staff to calculate what we expect the water rates to be and what our upfront costs would be and how we would finance that, we have to have numbers. And it's budget season.
You're 100% right. And what's changed is I advise the Loop Authority board members not to put numbers out there based on the level of due diligence that exists right now. A lot of the project costs are based on cost estimates that were done prior to the rapid inflationary period that we've seen in the engineering and architecture and construction industry over the last few years. And so this is a really big decision for your community. And so we didn't feel right about putting numbers in front of you that didn't reflect current market conditions and current evaluations, and didn't reflect cash flows. We also didn't want to, there's a dollar amount that always comes into these, and there's a time account. And so they're like, pay $6 million and you're in for how long? And what are the exit strategies? And what are the different terms of those agreements? So you're right. We are not here to sell you with whiz bang numbers or anything like that. We believe there's a value proposition here that in terms of partnership, in terms of the size and span of control. And we're not here to try to oversell you in terms of numbers that will likely change once additional due diligence is completed. We're just at a different life cycle than the NDS, and we're not here trying to tell you that we're at the same point in time as the NDS.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. We'll go backwards this time and start off with Mr. Fiorito, if you have questions.
I was really hoping you would go
Last? No, you got
No,
to go
no.
first this time.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for the Loop folks to come out. Couple questions. You did. So first, I'll echo what the mayor said. I was really hoping, even if they're rough wags, I was really hoping for some cost numbers. You did mention though that you had some initial cost estimates. Are those the ones that you're talking pre-inflation numbers? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm not gonna make you dance on that one. But if there's any way to get rough order magnitude costs to help the staff, that would be immensely helpful. On one of the slides, you mentioned, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me. You mentioned about the water treatment plants, and there was going to be adjustments, upgrade. What you're going to use the water treatment plants that are up here as part of the outflows, correct? But is that
as you pull water from your wells
Yep.
and use it through
Yep.
businesses and
Yeah, yeah.
houses, that gets returned to
Yep.
your wastewater plants. That is, that you own the right to that
Yep.
water through
Okay.
extension. So that is part of this loop water system is
Okay.
your reclamation ability at your existing wastewater plants, create a reusable return flow that can be captured through this
Okay.
project.
Those treatment plants are going to require updates and upgrades
sure.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
What some sooner rather than later, due to the EPA standards, how are those costs going to folded into the water loop, or are those upgrade costs due to regulations separate from the overall loop costs?
And I would say separate from the NDS costs. Those costs to generate that supply are separate from the cost
Okay.
for either the loop or the
Yeah.
NDS.
Well, for Forest Lakes and Triview, they're going to use the NMCI.
Okay.
And so we Monument are going to continue using our treatment plant. But now the loop is going to take ownership, I guess, of these two treatment plants. And how?
No, I didn't. I apologize if I left that
Oh, okay,
impression.
okay.
That was not, I could see why you got
Yeah,
that from
okay.
my slide. That was not the intent
Okay,
from
all
my
right.
slide. We are not taking,
Okay.
our intent is not to take ownership of those two
Okay.
plants.
Yeah,
it-
Monument doesn't own
Yeah.
Monument Sanitation.
Well, but my question was the loop authority, was it going to take control or take ownership of those treatment plants and then?
So I've invited Monument Sanitation to the table.
Yeah,
They're not at the table tonight.
Roger.
It would be nice if they were to become part of the loop authority. But we can.
We are where we are.
Had that discussion and it hasn't gone anywhere.
Cool.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Marco.
Rough wag, and I'm not to keep you held to this timeline, but rough wag, what's the loop's thought on completion ish of the loop?
5 years.
5 years?
5 years.
Okay. So towards that, how much time do you foresee that you're going to require for permitting and right of ways because it's a pretty significant track, for lack of a term. So is that 5 years include right of ways and?
It does, and that's in the first year and a half of that 5-year period is the securing the alignment and the associated rights for that alignment.
Okay. I was very interested to see the Calhan Reservoir. As we've talked before, Pueblo doesn't want a single molecule to go to Division 1. Fair enough. Is Calhan Reservoir have the same restrictions?
If you want to answer that, I think the answer is no, but yeah. So
Yeah, no.
Hang on.
Any of the
Get-
same restrictions as what's coming out of
Wait,
Pueblo.
wait till you get to the mic. So
I'm sorry,
That's
is that better?
Yeah.
So yeah, Calhan Reservoir doesn't have any of those particular types of restrictions. Also, Calhan Reservoir is 100% located geographically within El Paso County. There's nothing on the loop water system that's coming out of Pueblo County, nothing dealing with 1041s in Pueblo County, although there will be a 1041 permit that will need to be sought and obtained here in El Paso County pursuant to El Paso County 1041 permitting regulations. And so that's really what the whole system is about. We
Okay.
know, in fact, Woodmore, I've got 400 people over the divide.
Yeah.
It's not feasible for us to say that, hey, we're going to invest in a big project. And oh, by the way, you 400 customers over the divide can't have any of that water, even though you're paying for it, right?
Yep.
So
Okay.
for us, having things come out of Pueblo Reservoir is just not feasible. So
Okay.
that's why this project is a solution.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Last question. I was impressed with the amount of, call it existing infrastructure that some of the collaborators are bringing to the table. Everything from, it sounds like water rights infrastructure, It's fairly impressive. How are those existing assets, back up, are those existing assets going to be used to offset the cost for those entities? Or is that going to be a separate, this is what we bring to the table and the cost is going to be shared by X who sign up?
Yes. So participation in the Loop Authority, you're bringing assets into the pot. Yeah, and so for some entities, that'll be purely financial. For some entities, that'll be water rights. For some entities, that'll be infrastructure. For some entities, it'll be a combination of all of that. And that's the other part, is those assets and the relative value of those assets and the timing of that has to be evaluated and quantified in a cash flow model. And so that's another reason why we held off on presenting costs at this point, because those agreements are important and we don't want to misrepresent those agreements in front of your community tonight.
So then a follow-up then is, so if we don't have assets to bring to the table, I guess, how is so 100, keep it nice and neat, even 100 million, the assets brought by other entities offset the cost that those entities are going to pay towards that 100 million. So, but nothing's free. So that 100 million still has to get paid to build the infrastructure or X. So does that mean that the entities that don't have assets are paying the 100 million, or like, how is in order to make a decision, how is that costing going to work out for those entities that don't have assets to bring to the table?
They just print more money.
Oh, that's okay. All right.
exactly
Yeah.
it. That's how it rolls.
Yeah. My concern is, right now we don't have assets. I mean, we have wells, but what's the plan essentially?
So to cut to the chase, what's Monument's percentage? How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
Our cost is,
Just
if I
just
recall,
the percentage.
if I recall the previous meetings we've had, because Monument doesn't have the same skin in the game like Cherokee does with their new treatment facility that takes up half the county out east, right?
Print more money.
We will be on, the Monument customers will be on the hook for more, right? To make the connection points and things like that. We have, so our rates would be different from everybody else's rates.
Okay.
There's not going to be a level rate,
Okay.
right? Do I remember that correctly? Jesse?
Yes, that's correct. In fact,
What?
if I may just sorry. My apologies. I think Councilman Mr. Fiorito over here is getting at his root question is, what's the business model of the loop, right? How's it governed? What's the structure, et cetera, et cetera. And just a refresher, I know that there's a lot of new faces on the board since we probably last time presented this. The Loop Water Authority is its own entity. It's a water authority. You guys are currently member agencies of this authority, as Cherokee, Woodmore, Denala, all are. And what we envision in the business model is essentially the Loop Water Authority is the one that's going to own this system, operate this system. The Loop Water Authority is not unlike our commitments to our existing customers, right? Woodmore has a commitment to serve water and collect sanitary sewer from its residents. The Loop Water Supply is a little bit, I guess, up one tier in terms of government structure on that, where the Loop Water Authority their sole purpose is to serve member agencies. And so they are a clearinghouse where they own, operate, maintain this whole system. They have a water supply commitment to all of their member agencies in proportion in order to serve those member agencies. Now, what John was getting at, our next heavy lift is going to be to develop those agreements if they're direct, IGAs under the Water Authority umbrella with all the member agencies signing on, or if there's some sort of bona fide service commitments or service policies that the Loop Water Authority actually embeds in its policies and service requirements and guarantees that to its member agencies. That's a hurdle we still need to hop over. It's not insurmountable. It's just how do we want those agreements? How do we want those commitments made between the Loop Water Authority and its member agencies? So that's really the structure of how this is. There's nobody leasing water, any member agency leasing water to another member agency directly. So the way that it works is the Loop Water Authority for water supply, everybody is leasing water supplies into, we call it leasing in the back door and delivery out the front. Everybody's leasing water in the back door of the Loop Water Supply. So for the, as an example, Woodmore's would be leasing its List and Love, Lock, all of its surface water supplies. We're also leasing our reusable wastewater return flows to the Loop Water Authority. You guys, the town, although you're not a member of the Tri-Lakes wastewater treatment facility, but your water actually flows out of the Tri-Lakes wastewater treatment facility. You own it. So that reusable portion of your return flows that's flowing out Tri-Lakes, you would be asked to commit that water to the Loop Water Authority as well. Likewise, Denala is contributing a lot of surface water rights and surface water flows that they own in Fountain Creek and other locations, and then also their wastewater return flows. So basically, the Loop Water Authority is leasing these water supplies and building up this sort of bank of water that it can deliver to its member agencies on an annual basis. And John referenced it in his slide. You know, we've been talking about a very long-term lease structure. In other words, 50, 75 years. We haven't nailed that down just yet. We're not quite to that point where we need to start negotiating amongst ourselves on the nitty-gritty. We've got some other, you know, other milestones that we need to hit and some other due diligence that we need to get done. We're wrapping up an operational study right now, which is showing us a lot, showing us yields, showing us wet year, dry year, average year yields. And of course, everybody in this business, we're concerned about dry year, right? What are you going to do in a 2002 to 2006 timeframe, 2002 being the worst case out of that 4-year period, but that whole 4-year period was extremely dry in the region, right? Does the Loop Water Authority have enough water under this model in order to supply that particular, everybody's build out, not current, everybody's build out demands under that 4-year period? And the results, the preliminary results are really quite favorable in that regard. Now, I can't share those results with you tonight yet. We're still in final draft mode on that particular study, but I can tell you that's one of the due diligence items that we're working on right now. The next one is going to go towards the permitting, the alignments, the right-of-way acquisition. That's going to be what we call a schematic design. So we're looking at firming up a few more costs throughout the engineering and construction community. We've just published a statement of interest out on the street. We're inviting consultants, engineering consultants, as well as contractors to come in, sign up on our roster list. We can give you a call. We may have some, you know, small items of work for each and every one of these people to help us better get a handle and a grip on current costs. As John had indicated, the 2 studies that we have are dating back to what, 2020-ish. A lot of inflation between then and now. And again, that's why we're hesitant to present to you and say, gee, here's our proposal and here's what we're willing to do for you if we can't have 100% faith and confidence that those numbers are real and correct. I can tell you what they were back in 2019.
I can too. It was 162 million. And on that, what percentage of that was ours? And what is your projection on the inflationary costs, so we know exactly what listen, I can't hold you with what the inflationary cost is,
Sure.
but I can hold you to our percentage. Okay. Because
Correct.
monument share hasn't grown.
So,
Okay. So that's kind of what we're looking for here. If I can get to the bottom line. All right.
yeah, actually, bottom line on percentage, you're probably looking at, well, it's broken up by build out flows. So in other words, I think Woodmore's in for 2,100, Monument's in for 8 something, yeah, 869 rings a bell.
Yeah.
In fact, let me grab my phone. I can tell you.
That number is at full build out. That's what you're basing it off of.
Yes, these are full build out numbers of all the current member agencies. And so with the current model and with everybody's current build out numbers, Woodmore 53%, Monument 22%, Cherokee 13%, and Denala 13%.
Are we still at a point right now? And so,
Yeah, and Monuments, just so we're clear here, let me pull that back up. Monument is showing, at least in our current modeling, 869 acre feet annually is what Monument is put in as their build out demands.
So on this build out, you're counting your existing customers. So where I'm getting is if we annexed anything across the freeway, that's still, you're counting your build out in anything that you're currently serving.
Well, the way we define build out is our current, build out of our current service boundary. So right
That's-
now, we're
that's
not
what I'm getting
100%
at,
built
right.
out. We're about, I don't know, 80% built out. So we've got another 20% to go. So we project those numbers based on our current, acre feet annually per SFE, and we can come up with a projected annual consumption in terms of acre feet per year. And I don't know how Monument, I'm sure your staff could answer this. I don't know how you guys projected the 869, but that was the number when we were putting together this particular model. On the business side of things, that was the number that you guys had given us, because everybody got tasked with, go talk to your consultants, go talk to, your staff members. You bring a number back to the table and you tell us to plug that number in. And that's the number that we plugged in for you.
so at 22% of 162 million, that's $35 million. That's, am I wrong? Or that's what I'm calculating.
No, you're probably right.
Okay. And what my other question is, are the 13 colonies in? I mean, is everyone in on this, or is it's still up for debate? Is everyone in this system committed or not?
Nobody's committed at this point, other than we are committed to doing the due diligence, to vetting out and answering all of these difficult questions, getting to what the end game is going to be on the business model, getting to what that end dollar amount, whether you want to coin it in dollars per acre feet, dollars per 1,000 gallons, whatever the case may be. Everybody's committed to getting to that point. And of course, we do have $4 million from federal ARPA funds that, under a subrecipient agreement with El Paso County, has been delivered to us. So that's the money we're spending right now. And some of the initial seed money that all of the 4 entities put up to get this jump started off of the ground, we're going to get reimbursed for a lot of that coming back. So it's not like, you probably won't get reimbursed for 100% of it, but a good chunk of it. And so that's what we're committed to doing right now, is vetting this project out, doing all of the due diligence studies that we need to do, and coming back with definitive, hardline, and finite costs.
All right. I'm going to get back to the order of questions here, just so we can pass through. Marco, do you have any more questions? Mr.
I'm done.
Kimple?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just a few, John, Jesse, and the rest of the team. Thanks for coming and doing the presentation. Much appreciated. So some of it's been answered, but I have a few more. You stated that the system will be online, capable for use, everything without any delays or any obstacles, any permits and stuff, 5 years, so 2028, correct? Okay. Now, just to educate the folks online and folks in the audience, this is just to supply the west side of Monument, the west side of 25, town of Monument. It's not going to supply any water towards the east side of 25.
As far as I know, Monument's participation is just the west side. Is that correct?
It would also include Village Center on the east side.
Yes.
It would?
Because
Well,
of
we,
Woodmore.
we service
Because of
Village
Woodmore.
Center.
Woodmore.
Services.
Woodmore, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Woodmore services Village Center.
Well, Denala, Cherokee, Woodmore, but Monument, we're concerned about the customers that are connected to Monument's water
I know,
system.
I'm just
Right.
clarification for the audience online and future people looking at the tape. Future residents looking at the tape. Okay. So you all talked about control of future costs. And then we got to my question is, so on this Loop Water Authority, if we were a part of it, Are the stakeholders equal? And why I ask that question is, what if there's a disagreement, a difference of opinion on raising prices or cost or something like that? On this water, this loop water authority of these 4 or 5 entities, say if Monument disagrees with raising the prices, but Woodmore, Denali says, well, we need to do this. So who actually determines if there's a difference?
Right. That's a good question. It's one that I can't answer for you today, unfortunately. So these agreements, service policies that I mentioned
They all
earlier.
have to be written down into,
Yeah, until we get to that particular point,
Okay.
we don't know how the
Yep,
voting
that's fair.
structure is going to go on
Yep.
those types of things.
Similar questions that were asked to the Triview team. So although you don't, I understand your due diligence and I appreciate you being honest about that and not just throwing up some numbers and then coming back to and say, oh, it's changed.
Wrong
So,
number.
so much
Yeah.
appreciated on that. But what would be your deadline for commitment from the town of Monument?
Well, ultimately, we don't really have a deadline. We have a timeline. Like I said earlier, nobody is 100%, no member agency is 100% committed on this. But at some point in time, we will get to that point.
Okay.
And so we anticipate getting to that point probably around this time next year.
Okay. And again, similar question as to the previous presentation is, what effect does this loop system have if Monument doesn't join?
Well, obviously it takes out a partner. And so it raises everybody else's costs. Yeah, that's the effect, honestly. But, we know that, you have other alternatives that you're considering. And we're not here to make a sales pitch and tell you, gee, we think that we know what's best for you guys and gals. You know what's best for you guys.
Okay.
gals.
And my last question that I have right now is, if Monument was to join and this was established, what is the backup plan if there's damage to the pipe? Is there another system to tie in to provide water in case there has to be some kind of repair?
Well, the answer I'd give is the same that Mr. McGrady gave. You've got storage in your potable water storage tanks. Outages typically don't go on for more than a couple of days on the outside. It's really structurally no different than the NDS pipeline, right? They're both pipelines. They're both susceptible to outages, breaks, things of that nature. So it's really not any different in that regard to the NDS presentation that Mr. McGrady gave.
Okay, thank you.
And you got some new line right around Knollwood and 105, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I didn't notice.
No, but it is nice that they've removed all the cones, but left all the lines. So people are still following the lines, not the cones, and I'm waiting for the crash and smash to happen. Mr. King?
Yeah.
Okay, so ultimately, the governance of this is member agencies elect officials to sit on the board.
Yeah, we envision right now the board of directors of the Loop Water Authority are essentially the executive officers of each current member agency. So I'm one, Mike's a director, Miss Lathan is, Jeff is. So long term, in the short term, getting this thing off the ground, we thought it's more efficient if, because we're so involved on sort of the everyday boots on the ground kind of stuff, trying to get this project up running, get to a go-no decision by all of the member agencies that we talked about should come probably this time next year. And then once the system is constructed and it's up and it's operational, we envision that, this particular board is going to be comprised of members from each one of the member agencies. Now, whether that's 2 members per member agency, whether that's, seats in proportionality to ownership, again, until we've got those service policies and or intergovernmental agreements taken care of at a future date. We don't know what that necessarily looks like, but it's certainly going to be governed by the member agencies and conceivably their elected officials.
Okay. And then this study that's going on right now, when do you think that this would be complete? the $4 million study?
Well, it's not necessarily a single $4 million study. It's more like $400,000 studies, something like that. So we're finishing up our operations study, another study. It's not really a study. It's more of an engineering exercise, and that's a schematic design. Schematic design, we used to call them pre-design studies, 20 years ago, where you go in and you map out and you say, okay, here's the water treatment facility, here's the location, here's the water treatment system components, given the water quality that you need to treat to potable standards, and here's why, here's the best pipeline alignment for you to take, and here's why, here's the right of way acquisition stuff that you need to you need to go target, and here's why. And basically it's pre-designing the entire system so that it's one, it functions, obviously, first and foremost, but two, it's done in the most efficient to reduce costs of the system as much as possible. And then, of course, as John had pointed out in his presentation, there's going to be a number of phasing items that we believe in this system. It's not that we're just going to run right out and build every component in the system day one. Obviously, the pipeline, the pump stations, and the water treatment facility are probably the first to go in. The reservoir expansion conceivably can wait a little while. So that goes and gets built into this cash flow model. And once you get this cash flow model, then everybody is going to need to make some decisions on, well, gee, how do you want to fund your proportionate share? We've got anything from member agencies not bringing any cash to the table. And of course, all of the pro rata percentage of ownership of the system is getting embedded into volumetric fees that the Loop Water Authority is going to be charging that member agency. And then, of course, if that's the case, with any financing mechanism that the Loop Water Authority is going to be doing on behalf of its member agencies, there's going to be a bond payment, right? There's going to be an annual debt service. If that's being 100% fulfilled and paid for through rates, then my guess is the bonding, the investment bankers and their investors are gonna want to see take or pay agreements. In other words, bond investors don't care whether you take a single drop of water out of that system or 10 million acre feet out of the system. They want their money just the same, right? And that bond payment's not going to change. So that would be the purpose for those types of take or pay agreements and arrangements.
So the really complicated part of this is figuring out who's got what and how that's proportioned. And I know you have a lot of water rights, and Denala has a lot of water rights, and probably Cherokee does too. We have return flows and Cherokee doesn't, and they have infrastructure and we don't. How long do you think it takes to figure that out? Or is that all just part of this study that's upcoming?
So a couple of things to get there. So one of the studies that we're doing based on this statement of work, one of John's main tasks is going to be to reach out to the engineering and construction community and ask them, hey, we need some help getting some better costs, some more accurate costs according to the current economics and the current economy. And so that's going to be something that's going to be going on for, I don't know, probably the next 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, is to develop, okay, more accurate costs on exactly what this system is going to cost everybody. Then we can re-roll those costs into our business model, and we can re-crunch the dollars per 1,000 gallons or dollars per acre foot, or here's everybody's capital cost share, those types of things. And so that is something that's right away, something we're working on right now. The schematic design is going to come a little bit later on in the year, maybe towards the end of December, around Christmas time, maybe even into January. We're going to be publishing an RFP out on the street. We're going to be asking consultants to come in and actually perform this schematic design I just described a moment ago to you guys. That's probably going to take 6 months. I don't know, John, correct me here. So that's probably going to take 6 months. So once we've got a handle on hardline costs that we have a lot of faith and confidence in, and once we've got a handle on the schematic design in terms of what the system structure and all the components are, then we can go back into our business model, and then we can start developing our cash flow. Because, at the end of the day, the project's going to cost what the project costs. Obviously, you can pay for that in many different ways. You can bring 100% cash to the table and you get a lower dollar per 1,000 gallon delivery rate, right? Or you could bring zero cash to the table and your delivery fees are going to be higher. Or you can do any mix and match in between. I think on the NDS, Jim had you teed up for, the 6.5 initial capital outlay plus a bond payment, so to speak, of the 154,000 a year, and then on top of that, a volumetric rate at 13 and change per 1,000 gallons. So that is a myriad. That's a mix of like all three of the different financing and payment mechanisms. We had rates, I think, probably 2 years ago that we shared with the town council. Those volumetric rates, if anybody remembered them, they were based solely on $0 that you bring to the table, 100% embedded into delivery fees. And then, of course, over time, the more water you run through the system, if everything's embedded in delivery fees, the lower the rate goes. So you may start out at, X many dollars per 1,000 gallons at day one, and that would represent, let's say, 400 acre feet of annual demand for you guys. And then by the time you get to build out, you get to Y, which is twice as much water run through the system. So your volumetric rates have to go down because the bond payment's going to be static. Your debt service is static in this model. Conceivably, under this type of arrangement, you borrow the money, you put the infrastructure in, now you got your mortgage payment, and it stays fairly static. There is some variability in revenue bond payments each and every year, but not a lot.
Okay, so the last question would just be, if we're projecting 869 acre feet at build out, how much can this supply us in like a wet year versus a dry year? Have you got those calculations?
So we are basing that 869 and everybody's build out demands. What we're doing now in this study that we're currently wrapping up is we are having our consultants run. It's a very complex model. They're replicating river flows. They're replicating call records or overlaying call records. They did a 40-year study period comprised of 4 10-year periods stacked on top of one another. And that 10-year period, I believe, was from 98 to 2008, which included the 2004 to 2006 dry year time frame that, some argue that's the driest period on record here in Colorado. Others will argue it was in the 50s, but nonetheless, they're doing this fancy modeling, replicating all of these flows, and they're answering the question in a dry year. In a 2002, not necessarily a single dry year, but a dry period, 02 through 06. Is there enough water in here to serve your build out demand without any watering restrictions, my build out demand without any watering restrictions, and any member agencies build out water demand without any watering restrictions? That's the answer we're asking them for. In wet years, yeah, no problem. Dry years, that's the bugaboo.
So in a wet year, we could be 100% renewable if we wanted to not. I get we're going to use wells anyway, but there would be enough available for everyone.
Yes, and so I envision this system as not necessarily a conjunctive use system, because what we're all vying for here under the loop system is 100% renewable water for everybody, and even in dry periods at their build out numbers. Now, global warming, if you subscribe to any of that kind of stuff, who knows what the future holds, but this is the best modeling that the best minds in the state of Colorado can come up with in terms of answering in a dry year, does everybody get that water?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Romanella.
Yes. I have a couple things. One, I'd like to know how many people in the audience, not counting staff, are voting citizens within the 10,200 people in Monument here tonight? Not you. Okay, there's 3. I've been in these halls since 2014, and I know in 2016, if there's anybody else besides Councilman Kimball, Councilman Chronic, Citizen Swearigan who left, and myself, was there anybody else here in 2016 as a citizen here? Okay, all right, good. I know for a fact then that everyone was concerned with the renewable water from day one. So it's an issue that needs to be handled, and we're not going to keep pumping wells, okay? This has been, and I've never heard anybody say anything opposing renewable water, so this needs to happen. I think there's a lot of questions that are going to come out of this with regards to money and a lot of other issues, and a big part of this is this. my associate here, Mayor LeKind, and I come from Village Center Estates. I came to this hall in 2016 as the president of the Village Center Metro District, advocating for our rights because of a decision that a board made in 2014 without looking at all at the minutes of the board of 2004 that said everything along the 105 that you see across the street from Monument Academy should have been commercial. And they said that this would not at all be financially feasible at residential. And at full residential build out, we couldn't even pay a light bill, let alone our bond payment. Let me be very clear with you about something tonight, okay? We've all been in relationships. We've all been in businesses where we put a Band-Aid on something to make it okay for another 2 years or 3 years. That is not what I want to do here. What is right for the future? What is right for 20 or 25 years where I don't look back and go, that was the biggest mistake I made to placate? We need to make a very wise decision here, okay? And the money may or may not be the biggest issue. Sometimes money is the wrong issue for the long haul certainty. So we need to look at every evaluation on this. And that's the point I want to make to everybody. And I hope I'm clear on that, because we have been victims of that and it did not go well for us. Okay. So what is going to be the long range best opportunity for Monument and long range perpetuity for our water and our resources here? So I do want to say that. I do want to hear from Mr. Tharnish tonight, because he is our water authority, and I'm going to put him on the spot, whether it's now or later, about what he feels could be the best vision for our future. And, you know, without you giving us any numbers, which you don't have, and obviously this is going to be a much more costly venture, but the point is that we have to look at the fact that if we're not going to grow to county line, there's that. If we are, then we are. And in 10 years from now, if there are citizens that say, why didn't you think about that we were going to grow to county line or somewhere else? There's a lot of variables here that we need to consider. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Question about that is, will this system have the same issue delivering water or restriction?
It will not, because the public 1041 permit's not part of it.
Correct.
At all. It's it completely not.
And
That's the differential right there.
Which is why I asked
Yeah.
the question, is Calhoun Reservoir subject to the
It is not.
1 and 2 restrictions?
It is not. It is not. It will not restrict us at all.
and
That's
there's
the point.
400 customers sitting on the other side of the Palmer Divide today, give or take.
Give or take.
Right. So they're already
That's just in
delivering.
Woodmore.
And it's not the, it's basically the runoff, right? So sprinkler runoff, car wash runoff. It's not flushing. Water flushing comes back, but anything that's on the outside of the house goes north.
Correct. And
For those people.
it's very difficult to capture what they call lawn irrigation return flows. They're subsurface percolating flows. So very difficult to recapture.
Cool. All right. Councilmember Chronic.
Thank you, Jesse
You're welcome.
and Jeff. And I've not met you. My question is, at what point, is there a way that you can give us a date, I'm doing air quotes here, for a ROM, for a rough order of magnitude of what this would look like? I'm kind of with Councilman Romanello. We got to make a decision. We have to make a right decision, because we're only going to make it once. We're not going to be able to go back and say, oh my gosh, what have I done? I need to redo it. So I'm one of those that would rather do it right than do it over, or try to do it over. And I want to have as much information as possible. And yes, we do need some numbers. What's your timeline for something, a rough order magnitude?
Even if the
Yeah,
keyword is
so-
rough.
Yeah.
Even if it's an ugly baby, we'll take it.
Yeah. So, you know,
No, wait a minute. He'll take the ugly baby.
So, okay. This was, and you guys seen these numbers in the past, and I know John's going to cringe when I talk about this, but let's talk about the 2019 business model here and what we presented to the town. You got a copy of that presentation, I'm sure, in your archives. You can go look these numbers back up. But if I remember right, the ownership was what we talked about earlier, the 53, 22, 13, 13, your portion being 22. We had plugged in here zero money. Zero, you come to the table, you don't write a check. It's 100% fine. Everybody's share is 100% financed by the Loop Water Authority, and it as its own IGA entity can actually issue revenue bonds. Okay, so it would finance the entire project. There's a component in there for Cherokee's 17 miles of pipeline that is essentially a lease to own pipeline, and basically at the end of the 50, 75-year term, and I think we went out at least on the Cherokee pipeline lease to own concept, 58 years was embedded in this model, and it's being paid back by essentially a rider or $1 per 1,000 gallon rate. And of course, when you start out with this system today, let's just make the math simple. Let's say we got 3,000 acre feet of demand between all 4 member agencies at build out. Today, nobody's at build out, right? We've got 2,000 acre feet of demand, and then we're growing into 1,000 acre feet of demand. Well, that's many, many thousands of gallons of water on an annual basis. So when you roll in the bond payment that would be necessary at roughly the same percentage rate, I think we were using 3.5 back then. You roll in that, and then you roll in the leasing fee, which everybody that's leasing water, even Monument, although you don't have a ton of it to lease, you at least have your wastewater reusable effluent that you could lease, right? And even when the system comes to a steady state, the water that's coming to you out of the loop system, even if it replaced 100% of your well supply, you're still getting credit for that as if those were your return flows. Okay. So you are actually leasing those return flows back to the loop entity. The number was $300 an acre foot. I think Jim just threw out a number. Leasing from Pueblo was 600, Jim. 800. So just to give you sort of some rough comparison there between what others are leasing and what this business model has embedded in it. And so starting out day one with your current demands, not your build out demands, you're at about 18 bucks a thousand. Okay. Now run the reel forward throughout time at build out, right? A lot of these costs, other than operating costs, which those are cooked in too, those actually escalate over time. But your static fees, your annual bond payment, assume you don't refinance, you got that 3.5% long term, et cetera, et cetera. At your build out 869 acre feet, if you were using that in the future, your $1 per 1,000 gallon rate drops to about 10 bucks a thousand. That was in the business model that we presented to you guys back in 2019. Now I ran a quick back of the envelope calc. If you want a comparison to Jim, and Jim can certainly probably crunch these numbers on his own and come back to you. But if you put everything that Jim had up on the board, your 6.5 million plus your 158,000 a year for 25 years, if you convert that into $1 per 1,000 gallon basis for the 400 acre feet that he's tooting or that he was presenting in his presentation, you're at about $17.15 a thousand currently if you sign on to the NDS. So if you want a comparison, you can compare the 18 with the loop to the 17 I just described. And then over time with the loop authority, that number's getting driven down just because the flows through the Loop Water Authority are going up.
So to my question, what's your timeline for producing a ROM? Or did you just do it?
That's pretty much what I have at the moment, but the timeline to get all of these refined and come back with a really more specific number that we can have more faith and confidence in. In 2019, these numbers we had pretty good faith and confidence in. We had capital improvement costs coming off of a brand new study that was using then current, construction costs. Well, they're a little outdated now. So we don't have any other confidence in those numbers I just described to you that we had back then. So that, again, that was our hesitancy to flash numbers up to you guys, but I can see you guys are really disappointed that we didn't do that. So I'll throw some off the cuff to you. But Laura, to answer your specific question, we're looking at about 6 months from now. I think we'll have very specific answers to those particular costs, and we'll have a lot more faith and confidence in those, and we'll have more refinement on the business model. And like John said, our project is not at the same stage as Jim's NDS project. He's almost nearing the end of construction. We haven't even begun design. So it's very tough for us to take our projections and compare them to some of the numbers that are actual for Jim. So I just want to make sure I put that into perspective for you guys. But we're probably 6 months out, I would say. Does anybody disagree? Yeah, Amy? From being able to have at least a lot better faith and confidence in these dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from you? No? Okay, I don't have any questions. Amy, you want to have
Come on
something
up.
to say?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, council. It's a pleasure. And I don't want to belabor this because it's late and you've been hearing a lot of numbers and even us as water providers were glazed over. But I'm Amy Lathan, General Manager of Cherokee Metropolitan District. I just want to say, I thank you for your patience with us on this because of the fact that we are at different places in both of these proposals. They are similar in terms of the return flows and the reuse concepts, getting a number of customers, thousands of customers off of sole reliance on the Denver Basin, but we're just in a different place. So I really appreciate your question. We just didn't want to put numbers up that may have changed somewhat. I'm really glad Jesse went ahead and brought those up, but it's so critical to remember that although there are similarities, the loop allows for you to grow wherever you want to grow because there are two components not included, CSU and the convey, treat, deliver, and Pueblo. It is completely autonomous within El Paso County. Now, that's not to say that there wouldn't be ways that we can partner. And I believe that there are some good ways that we can partner, possibly even with CSU on treatment and some other issues that are coming down the pike. But we have the autonomy. That's one of the major goals, is to be able to use existing water rights and existing infrastructure in a more ethical way. And I'm speaking to that with our pipeline. This would be, in my opinion, a more ethical use of the millions of dollars of infrastructure that we have in the ground already to serve far more people. And those water rights and the renewable rights in a system that has autonomy. And even though we would all join up in the governance of that system, we would still have more local control of that system than to be subject to not only the water rights and the conveyance, but the wastewater treatment. It was brought up earlier tonight about what about all those new regulatory requirements that are coming down in the future. The bright lights that we all look at every day, that's usually the train, not the sun rising in the morning, but uh, those are things that we want to have some autonomy, obviously, and be able to control those rates for our customers. And that's what we're trying to create. And I would argue that it is the best thing out there for this region, and I mean everybody in El Paso County and surrounding areas, to have options. There's so much value in options. And so having redundancy matters. It matters for us in terms of what we're trying to create here with this loop system. It's not about competing. It's about having redundancy. And as water providers, we do stay awake at night. That was mentioned as well, with single points of failure. And so having redundancy in this region where we have options to be able to either have local control or have options to be able to buy if necessary. It's not just about main breaks. It's also about contamination events. That is value. And so our numbers are not going to match up at this stage because we're not at that stage. But our numbers in the long term is what we're trying to present to you. And we will have that soon. I thank you for your patience in us not being at the same level in our studies and what we are able to present. But that's exactly what we're working toward. And I appreciate that you're looking in the long term, because that is what's going to matter. And you can't discount all of those conveyance costs. You have to put them all together. And what we're trying to do is just create autonomy in all of that. So we're thankful to you for the complexity and bearing with us in the complexity of this. We're trying to simplify by making ourselves autonomous And we're just very thankful for your time on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you to both groups for being here. I think my head's spinning.
Number 5, resolution.
Right, right. We will move on to,
I'd like to just make one quick statement just while it's in my head. Because she made a very good point. And if we look at the macro for the region and getting more people out of the groundwater supply, I think that needs to be a factor that we look at, just because it takes more people out of the Denver basin. So I just wanted to bring that up because she made the point and I thought it was a good one.
I would concur.
okay, so next up, we have resolution number 59, 2023. I don't know how the council feels. My thought is based on the fact that we have still limited information that this gets tabled.
Continued.
Continued.
I do have a
Continue.
question before we continue it,
Okay.
and that is the $2 million from the county. Is that an accurate amount?
4 million.
4 million, excuse me, 4 million. So the $4 million that you're going to ask us to pass this resolution so we can use.
No,
Oh.
No, we've
we've
already
already
done
we
that.
already passed it.
Already done that.
Okay, so then what is this resolution going to do?
This would be an up or down vote to join the loop authority.
Okay. But if we don't, what happens to the $4 million?
We're still in the loop authority. Okay. I'm still on the board of directors. We can still be involved in the use of that $4 million. We'll still have decisions.
Whether we decide right now or not.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Thank you.
Do we have to continue it to a specific date, or can we just let it float out there in the ether?
That is a great question for our town clerk.
Do we want to let it float in the ether though?
Well, we've got it. We're waiting for,
Yeah,
well, we
let's,
can call
let's
it-
continue it to the second meeting in November.
there is no second meeting in November. It's been
How
canceled.
about the first meeting in December?
First meeting in
First
December.
meeting in
Okay, first
December.
meeting in December.
Yep.
Excellent. So do I have a motion to continue this to the first meeting in December?
I move to continue resolution number 59, 2023 to the first meeting in December.
Second.
Motion and 18 seconds.
All in favor?
Ms. Erickson?
Mayor Pro Tem King,
Yes.
Councilmember Kimple,
Yes.
Mayor LaKind,
Yes?
Councilmember Fiorito,
Yes.
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Romanello,
Yes.
Councilmember Chronic.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 7-0. Public comments. Individuals attending in person may raise their hand to indicate their desire to comment. Individuals attending via Teams may raise their hand digitally to comment via connected devices. Please lower your hand when finished with your comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there anybody here who has something to say? Sir? Can you sign the paper up there? Oh, they must have moved it for the laptop.
And to be clear, since the resolution hasn't passed and there was no public comments available, that the comments that's available now can be addressed to the previous topics.
Say what you would like.
Okay, thank you. Just want to be clear. Thank you. My name is James Otis. I know about half of you. I currently serve on no boards. It's great. It's freedom. So I want to just address a couple of things. Triview residents within the town of Monument get their water from Triview. It's approximately 2/3 or 8,500 residents. The Monument Water provides water to approximately 2,000 town of Monument residents. So the question I have regarding the 2 water questions that we've been listening to today and will be going on for quite a while because it's not an easy solution, is who will pay? Triview residents, for example, are currently paying the $26.1 million NDS pipeline price. Town of Monument Water residents are paying 0. Now, if they choose to If you choose to join in on that, that'll change a little bit. But for right now, the way things are, Monument Water residents are not receiving the benefit of the NDS pipeline, and so therefore they're not expected to pay for it. Likewise, if Monument chooses to join the loop, who's going to pay the $85 to $147 million bill? Is it going to be the 2,000 water users, or is it going to be the total 10,500 Monument voting residents? Residents that are, excuse me. So as some of you may know, I've been familiar with both projects over the last couple of years. And so just want to clarify a couple of facts and just kind of put some things out to consider. Residents who would be north of the county line, the water line can be capped off. And those from the reuse system, and that water can be run just off of well water. That would prevent any issues or concerns tying in with water that would be coming up from Pueblo. So that way they would not be an issue. Also, there was a little bit of a concern about the 25-year lease on the NDS pipeline. If CSU were to become a problematic child, the NDS can actually build its own pipeline just east of Powers Boulevard. And this could occur before the 25-year lease renewal period would occur. Also, and I would like to point out, these are my opinions also. And finally, the loop needs your money. They want you to pay for the loop while they pay with their assets. It's not going to be 22%. 22% is what it's going to be every year after that. Thank you. I'm sure I probably went over, so sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Is there anybody else that would like to say anything that's in the room?
But just to put something on the record, since he brought it up and we need to address it, the people that would pay for the loop system or any system that only benefits Town of Monument water users would be the Town of Monument water users.
You can chip in extra if you want to.
I'll just restate what I said. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody online that has anything they'd like? Okay, nobody else in the room? Are we sure there's no one else in the room? Okay. Going once, twice. We will close public comment. Is there any council authorization items? Okay, then.
Yes. I sent a message to Mr. Foreman earlier last month. I went to my second Monument Cemetery presentation, and there was a group of people who wanted a hard copy of the presentation, the book, yes. And they asked, well, gee, couldn't the Town of Monument pay to have that printed and bound and then sell it? And I said, I'll ask. So there we are. It's a 73-page document. So posting it on the website and or doing anything electronic is, number one, prohibitive, but also remember your audience. These were not teenagers. So that's my spiel.
And just looking for direction from the council.
I'm looking for a direction in terms of can we budget paying for it, or I'm happy to take a look at how much it would cost to do it on a per 50 or 25 basis, and to also talk to our bookstore locally and see if they would be willing to sell the booklet.
Or could the town pay for the printing, sell it, but the funds recouped go to cemetery upkeep?
Oh,
Ooh.
Or we could do a fundraiser or lean beans.
That's sweet.
That could work too.
I like
I
that.
Like that.
Bottom line, I love it. I really do. That's a fantastic idea. Let me, if there's no objections and if this is allowed, let me, I can also ask UCCS if they have, because I don't know, some universities have their printing press. We can ask UCCS if they have a print, I don't know what to call it, but you know how some universities have print books, historical books.
Well, we can get a copy of it. It's already spiral bound, you know, with that nice plastic
Mhm.
spiral and a nice cover.
Yeah.
Color cover sheet. So I'm happy to get a copy of that and, you know, circulator to do whatever we need to do.
We will need to get permission from the authors too, written permission from them, because there were authors of this.
Yes.
So we just want to make sure we
Well,
have.
and they
their
were the
permission.
authors that were presenting and were asking the questions. So yes, Mike
just need to
and
get-
John.
Written permission from them.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Notarized written permission.
I think
is what
we
Ms.
should
Wiseman
pursue it.
Farm
Yeah.
is looking for.
Exactly.
So why don't we, they did this on behalf of the cemetery, correct?
Right.
So does the town own the copyright to the material they produced?
That would be something we'd need to ask Bob about,
Okay.
because they did
so
this
I
as a
think that
project.
Before we jump into printing,
Direction for further information.
yeah, I would say that the council's direction is to find out more information about the ownership of the book and what we can do with it.
Yep, we will do.
Okay, any other council authorization items? Okay, any council comments not related to what we've already discussed or,
Yes,
okay,
just want to thank Tri-Lakes Cares for standing by and being available in case there was a government shutdown, because we have a huge military and government employee presence in the town and surrounding the area. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
You may have been needed.
any other council comments? Anybody else? Okay, then I have something to read. Let me find it.
Oh, yes.
All right. Mr. Foreman, have you reached out to our attorney?
I can right now.
All right, the next item on the
I've
agenda
been
is
texting him all along.
item 9A, an executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B, Colorado Revised Statute for a conference with town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions related to the September 14th, 2023 letter from Suzanne Tahari. The town attorney will be participating by telephone. May I have a motion, please?
Is he
I so
available?
move.
Second.
Yeah, so we will go into executive we'll take a 5-minute recess. We will go into executive session and we will adjourn immediately from the executive session. There's no expected actions to be taken.
Yes.
Yeah, we should probably take a vote.
Okay. Councilmember Chronic,
Yes.
Councilmember Kimpel,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem King,
Yes.
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Mayor LaKind,
Yes?
Councilmember Fiorito,
Yes.
Councilmember Romanello.
Yes.
Okay, we are moving to executive session and we'll be doing that here.
Thank you, Tina, for keeping us on.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.